Our modern Western culture places little to no value on the power of our nightly dreams
to inspire, shift, and reorganize our lives.
This podcast demands a deep reconsideration of
the role our dreams play on our path to a more vital
and meaningful life. The following is living proof
of the life-affirming power of dreams
to effect change
and redirect the trajectory
of our inner and outer lives. These
are our dreams that shape us.
Dreams that shape us.
Life loses its magic when we muddle through it. Another day doing the freeway shuffle. Another night in front of the tube. Another week or month or year goes by, living a mechanical life in a mechanical world. All concrete and steel and predictability. In that way, it's a dead world. And as for the magic, we'll leave that for David Copperfield. When life loses its magic, and when what we experience is mostly painful and confusing, we may seek our stimulation in drugs and risky behaviors. That's how it was for our guest, Kris. As a young woman, she came to a crossroads where she could continue going down the path of numbness, or take a big risk and try to find a road to a magical life. And with her dreams leading the way, she left the ordinary world of muddling and shuffling and numbing and entered one where everything is alive so vibrantly, where coincidences are meaningful and the world speaks to our hearts, reminding us that we too are intimately part of it, along with the birds and the bees and the creatures of the sea. We too can fly high and dive deep and taste the sweet nectar. Join us now as we follow our dreams to rediscover the magic of life.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dreams That Shape Us podcast. This is the podcast where we share story after story to obliterate the Western myth that dreams mean nothing by offering you these beautiful human stories of how dreams have truly shaped people's lives. Tonight we're doing something special. Right now I have Kris Lang with us and also my partner in the dream, Mr. Jam DeBoard. What's up, brother?
Yeah, man, we're going to try something new here. We have such a story for our listeners that it requires the two of us to interview our guest, Kris, because we're going to make sure that we get all the angles covered. So we're going to, after 3 seasons, or into 3 seasons and all these episodes that we've put out, this is the first time that we've done an interview together. So this is going to be an experiment on the one hand, and also a way of honoring the story that Kris has to tell. We've already delved into this a bit with her, and it's amazing. There's so much to tell. This is why we have to do it this way. We were inspired to do it, so we're hoping that it comes out in a way that honors her story.
Yeah, so we'll be definitely looking for a little bit of feedback if you like the fact that Jason and I are both on this. Please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram and let me know. Maybe we'll start doing this more often. But so tonight we have my good friend, Kris Lang. She has an amazing story to tell here tonight. One of what I'm kind of encompassing as the reclamation of her magical self. She had a few situations that happened in her early life that really hardened her and closed her off to her heart and her feelings and led her down a pretty dark path for a little while. And then she had this really special experience that happened that we're going to hear all about that really changed her life in a way that welcomed her back to herself. And we'll get to see these really special dreams that she had that just feels so soulful in a way that really, truly, from my vantage point, really looks like soul retrieval in a way that isn't so dark, isn't so like hardcore, but it's just this beautiful welcome home, essentially. So yeah, thank you for being here. If you want to introduce yourself in some capacity, hello.
Thank you so much for having me. And I feel like this is so special. I get to have you both together. And yes, I hope I can share my story in a way that, yes, serves a good purpose here. So I guess a little bit of my backstory is that I grew up in Connecticut, and I had a really good childhood. And I also always felt growing up, Connecticut and New England is a conservative. In my view, it was very conservative and a bit repressed. And so there was always something that felt kind of stifling or suffocating to me there. And I always also had this sense of, as I was getting older, that there was just something didn't feel right about this world. There felt always like there was something more that I had a sense of but couldn't name. And so I was one of those kinds of kids, really curious and questioning. And I think I would always have been a big picture kind of thinker and looking at the world that way. And I also grew up Catholic, so I had that early programming also. And so, that was kind of my life. And I did have a few experiences also early on of some early childhood sexual trauma that I didn't realize until later really had a negative impact on me. And I also I think I was about 14, and I had a cousin who died suddenly in a car accident. And that also really, really impacted me in a very deep way. And I became very kind of obsessed with death and life and the bigger questions. And sometime around that time, when I was about 15, I started down a path of drugs and alcohol. And that took me, on a ride that I call like the dark path for quite a while. I would say probably about 7 or 8 years. And, how I felt during that time, which is probably, common for anybody diving down the road of addictions, was, and risky behavior, was that I, was just numbed out. That's what drugs do. And so I was, numbed out, not very conscious, and really, I would say shut down would be fair to say. Like really not present, not in my body. And ultimately, in the beginning part of my 20s, I became also really depressed. And it was then that I had an opportunity to move to California. And that was a really pivotal move for me. And it was the time there I finally took a turn back onto the path of light, I would say. I had a few experiences in my early 20s, one of which I found, the book that many people out there have read, Autobiography of a Yogi. And this really changed something for me. I had rejected, the church and the idea of God and kind of shut all that away. But hearing the experience of the yogis and all these, seemingly supernatural abilities to, telepathy and bilocation and spiritual experiences and mystical experiences, I just knew in my heart that these were true and these were available. And so that kind of was what started me on this path. And then I became a really heavy meditator. And And then I got into dream work at that time. And that's, a little bit of the backstory, which kind of brought me to this awakening that I had through dream work.
What was your entry point into dream work? Was it a particular school of thought or a book or somebody you met in California?
Yeah, actually, I met a man named Jeremy Taylor, who you probably know and have heard about. And and I feel very fortunate that was my first inroad. And I ended up studying with Jeremy for a few years in Oakland at Matthew Fox's school. And so that was my introduction into group dream work, and it was amazing.
Yeah, projective, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Projective dream work.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. And it really set a great foundation for me, and was, also the time where I first learned about lucid dreaming and had my first lucid dream, which was like another initiation. There was a lot of openings happening for me.
I'd love to hear about that first lucid dream.
Well, so that first lucid dream, it was so wonderful. I mean, I'm not sure if everybody's first lucid dream is like that, but mine sure felt that way. I was basically, I was in my dream and I was looking at some very large paintings that were paintings of people, like their faces, and they were really big. And it was my own art that I had done. And then I probably had gone, I think, into a bathroom and saw myself in a mirror, which was my trigger to getting lucid. And then I realized I was dreaming, and I got really excited, as we do. And I ran outside and I found myself in a huge parking lot, and I started to wonder, what am I going to do? This is the first time I'm lucid. So I decided that I would make it rain. And all of a sudden the sky opens up and it's raining, and I feel the rain soaking me, and it just feels amazing. And all of a sudden, a huge being of light appeared in the sky. And it was multicolored. And at that time, I called it an angel, an angelic presence. And as soon as that being of light appeared in the sky, I went into like a state of ecstasy, and I found myself next to a woman and her child, and we were all there, and we all went into an ecstatic state together. We started turning cartwheels in place in this circle together, just involuntarily. And then all of a sudden we stopped, and I put my hands on her shoulders, or both of them on their shoulders, and told them that we had to remember this moment, and we remember each other, and that when we woke up, that we should try to find each other. And I was 100% convinced that they were real people in the real world that I could find.
Wow.
Well, that has a lot of the hallmarks of dreams that open you up to a sort of, we've heard it described as the divine light. For one, kind of this, you had something that introduced itself into the dream. You said, let it rain. And then the dream said, oh, I'll make it rain, and I'll give you more than that. So you get this being of light that shows up. And so for one, you've had the dream give you more than you expected. And then two, there's the woman and the child that shows up. And this seems to be, just based off of what I've seen with this type of dream, is that you're bringing, at that moment, you are in a very deep creative process of bringing something new into your being, maybe even into the world too. Obviously you're in the world and it's coming into you, but it's beginning as this deep, process that's going on within yourself. And it's interesting that dream starts off with you seeing what? Art that you had created. So now you have a woman with the child is her creation. They're along with you. And then you said you were involuntarily doing cartwheels in a circle. And that's another thing that we've seen in this divine light sort of dream, is you're actually in that movement, you're actually creating a symbol.
And the symbol is one of wholeness, because the circle is considered to be, in classic sort of Jungian terms, a symbol of wholeness. And I think Jeremy Taylor would also recognize it too, as this thing that shows that the center within you is now coming forward and like making itself known to you. And of course, in that circle it's a very magical place. So I think that thank you for sharing that. And I think it's really set off this theme of showing how your dreams brought the magic back into your life. And in a way, could we say, Kris, that this was that seminal moment, that this is where it really kicked in for you with that lucid dream?
I think so. I think that would be true. I mean, that, like I said, it felt like an initiation of sorts, having this first lucid dream that was so powerful, and, to go into a state of ecstasy when a being of light appears. Like, I had never experienced anything like that. So, yeah, absolutely.
So well, I can just say from my experience, I don't know if that's how everybody has their first lucid dream. I know for me, mine was definitely just as initiatory. It's what brought me on the path of dreaming. I had no idea what lucid dreaming was, and it just rocked my whole world so hard. I thought I died. And so then when I woke up and realized I was still alive, but I had this fully conscious experience, it like changed my whole life. I was like chasing it ever since. So in that way, it was ecstatic for me, but definitely didn't have any beams of light or that kind of ecstasy in it. But just as powerful. And I think if you're called into, if you're called into dream work in general through dreams, like it's not just like a thing that you like want to pursue. It's like the dreams come after you. I think, I think they present themselves in a way that you can't shake from there on out. That's at least my opinion about that. I think if you have a strong calling from within the dream to pursue the path, that they take you by the shoulders and they throw you off the ledge a little.
Yeah, I would say that I was called in that dream for sure.
Yeah.
So Kris, how long until we know in the next part of your story that we're going to end up down in a shamanic compound in Mexico. So you arrive in California, you somehow get hooked up with Jeremy Taylor, who everybody out there who knows Jeremy was a minister, and he was also a dream work teacher, and he put in decades of work out there in Northern California. Many people can trace their lineage, even active members now of the DreamWork community, professionals and people who just have a deep interest in this can trace their lineage to Jeremy. Plus he had some influential books and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So for one, you were, you ended up in good hands. And how long was it until you went to Mexico?
I think it was pretty soon after that. It was only, I think, the following year after I stopped studying with Jeremy. So it was, say 1996 was when I left for Mexico.
And it sounds like a good time to maybe talk about that. What led you, how did this opportunity open up for you?
Okay, so this story is kind of fun. The first time I decided to go to Mexico, I was going on, in San Francisco, I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but there was a bus company called the Green Tortoise, super fun travel bus. And I got on that bus in San Francisco, was going to the Baja for 10 days. And it was there that I met my now husband. And we had this amazing trip and we fell in love and we decided to stay together. And so we, not long after that trip, I basically sold everything I owned, and he had a VW van And we were going to go on this open, extended, what we thought was traveling through Central America. And what ended up happening was we got to Mexico and we got involved with a man who had a ranch that was open to travelers and to people. And there were mixed families on this ranch. So there were people from the U.S., Mexicans, and Huichol, the Huichol indigenous community. And that's how we ended up meeting the Huichol families that we did and our family in Mexico. And then we became involved over a period of 3 years, participating in traditional ceremonies and journeys to their sacred sites and engaging in peyote ritual and gathering and all kinds of things. And so basically that is how I ended up there. And that was another I feel super fortunate and super blessed to have been invited in by these people who were incredibly generous, not only with their selves and their lives, but with their traditions. And that is not always the case. And I just, we had such an amazing, really life-changing experience, basically, that happened to me down there.
Wow, that's so cool. I just love the thought of you in a VW van. It seems, I don't know, well, as you were just telling it just felt like I was watching some kind of movie of some sort. Very cool. I'm curious, is there any to help really set the stage for the kind of mind and heart opening experience that you had there? Can you kind of lead us a little deeper into a couple stories that you may feel okay sharing about maybe some of the experiences you had on peyote or a couple of ceremonies, if you could talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So for me, because we were already in, I would just say this whole thing about traveling, living in a van, we were really in a different flow state, actually. I feel like we were moving to a different rhythm. Our circadian rhythms were different because we were sort of up and down with the natural light. And you have to realize this was way before cell phones and even email and all kinds of things. So we were really engaged in our in nature and just this natural flow. And so there was a lot of just synchronicity and things like that already happening. And I would say when I went to the desert, and this going on these pilgrimages are not easy trips. They're long, they're trying. And, we were doing all the kind of protocols that you normally do, like fasting and all kinds of, ceremonies and things we had to do, objects we had to make, to give, offerings, just really kind of deeply engaging in this tradition. And when we got to one of the sacred sites in particular for me, which was in the state of Monterrey, Mexico, I would say that the peyote for me was, it was very intense, but also very gentle. And what happened mainly to me on most all my experiences with peyote is that the natural world opened up to me. So I'd already, heard about this, idea that everything was alive and that everything was connected. And that was sort of more like an intellectual sort of, concept that I had. But when I got there, I got to really experience that. And I would say that that's when the animist in me became born, because I could see and hear nature speaking to me. And so it just kind of confirmed all these things I had already kind of heard about. And so it's also where I really realized, this concept of like the ancestors, to me, to that point in time in my young life, I really had no idea what that really was, to be honest. But through those experiences, I really became to understand what the ancestors really are, and that they're really real and they're here, and they don't just encompass our human ancestors, but they also encompass, other than human, and our, nature friends and spirits of place. And so all those kinds of experiences, although they were gentle, they cracked something so deep open in me that really changed the entire makeup and structure of who I am and how I saw the world.
Wow, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, you can see it in the dreams that we're about to discuss. And this was something that Steve and I noted as we were getting ready to talk with you tonight, is you had so many dreams that featured these powerful, you could say mythological animals. And after seeing a lot of different kinds of dreams and talking with a lot of people about their dreams, yours really stood out for that quality. And now I think that we're starting to see the lineage. You pursued something that ended up becoming a theme in your dreams, and not just in a very magical sort of way. And as I was thinking through this, Kris, I wondered, did all this happen before or after you read Carlos Castaneda?
I don't know, actually. I did read one of those books. And I also, it's funny that you mentioned that, because, not to sidetrack, but I know that one of the books I read during that time was a book by Jose Arguelles called The Mayan Code. And I don't know, but it was also, that was the year there was something called the harmonic convergence that happened. I don't even know exactly where that happened, but there was some kind of energetic download opening that also happened to me when I read that book. And I know Carlos Castaneda's book did influence me in some way as well. But I don't know if I read it before or after, to be honest.
So it starts with the teachings of Don Juan. And, he wrote a lot of the other books after that. These were very popular in the 70s and continuing into the 80s. And the one that really grabbed me was The Art of Dreaming. He describes a lot of what you're talking about. He found a place down in Mexico. He was on the southern coast somewhere, and he found this indigenous shaman named Don Juan. And Don Juan had this compound. There were people who were there with him, students and seekers, people kind of coming and going in and out of the scenes. And then there's Carlos, who's this, graduate student in anthropology, who's going down there for these trips for him to learn the indigenous ways, to ingest the plant medicines, the psychedelics, the peyote, the mushrooms. But mostly he doesn't really emphasize that stuff. He talks about what he experienced in these deep states of meditation. Don Juan would teach him, a certain practice to do. And then he would go into the meditation and he would practice. And he started finding that, well, for one, this stuff really works. You can hear stories about this stuff and it all sounds very magical and maybe kind of hokey to someone with a Western mindset. But then you practice it yourself and you find that you have these experiences that, they're happening within your own mind, but he also found that there were things that were happening like group experiences. They would meet in places like in the astral where they would have experiences together and they would come out of it and they could talk about their experiences and realize that it was something that an experience they shared together. that it really did happen. Did you ever have those kinds of things happen to you? And I'm curious if you did any shared dreaming with the members of the community down there.
Yeah, actually, so I can't say that there were any astral experiences that we shared as a group, although we were sharing experiences, and there were some things that were happening to me, and things I was seeing during some of these times that others also were experiencing. So maybe in a sense, that is answering your question. There were things that I thought I was only seeing with my own eyes, that when in retrospect, years later, talking, with a group of people, that we actually all did see the same things. And yes, so the two people I traveled with the most in our van, one day, we all woke up from a shared dream, which I thought was really funny, because I woke up and I said, "Oh, this is so funny. I had a dream that I shaved off my beard." And, it's just weird that I had a beard. They both had beards. And then they said, one after the other, I had the same exact dream. So we all three had a dream on the same night, sleeping closely together, that we shaved off our beards. So that was pretty cool.
Huh. Well, what are the odds? Like, is everyone really itching, or, if you look for something like, why would three people have the same dream if it wasn't a shared dream, and you would wonder if there wasn't some kind of condition that was going on that you were all experiencing. But then again, it sounds like your two travel companions were male and they really did have beards. And Kris, I'm going to assume you did not have a beard, like a real beard.
I did not. I really didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what would be the odds? I've dreamed a few times in my life that I can remember about shaving. Steve, how about you? How often do you think you dream about shaving?
I know I've had dreams of shaving my head, but I don't believe I've ever had any dreams of shaving my beard.
Yeah, so then for three people to have that dream in the same night. So you were each, though, were you together in the dream, or was it that you each dreamed about shaving your beards individually?
Yeah, it was individually. And I always think that represented some kind of symbolic gesture, that we were about to embark on this journey, right, of these pilgrimages to these sacred sites and doing all the ceremony. And somehow to me, it spoke to that, about some kind of change that was about to happen.
Yeah, ritual preparation.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same reason why, an adept entering a monastery might shave their head. It's a way of kind of leaving the old self behind. So, and maybe even sort of like making a ritual sacrifice of something that, you're saying, well, here, I can make this offering. This is something that is part of me and I can offer it. So it might just be your whiskers. It might be the hair on your head, but it's still kind of a given. Sometimes it can be given in that sort of spirit. So from there, you tell us now, we know that in 1998, you had just an explosion of incredible dreams. Can you lead us up to that with what was going on in Mexico?
Here, wait, can I interject?
Yeah, ma'am.
There was some moment that I wanted to circle back to. So before we get into the dreams, I want to circle back to it real quick.
Okay.
So that the moment where you began speaking about really understanding who the ancestors were and kind of reclaiming all of that generational love and beauty, and just knowing how much deeper it is. It's not just human ancestors. It's more than human ancestors or like non-human ancestors. To me, that I just wanted to circle back to that and to really accentuate the power of this kind of a moment, especially us European descended Americans, we're so cut off from our ancestry that I just feel like this is a moment that I just want to really highlight for you, and to really kind of dig a little deeper into the gravity of this kind of moment, like just how truly special this is. I kind of had a moment like this recently, and there's so much power and coming back into connection with your ancestors. I know a lot of us European descended white Americans have typically a very conflicted relationship with our ancestry. And the shamanic practitioner that I've done a lot of work with here in Minneapolis, he says that the crossing of the ocean to the Americas was a powerful severance that we committed against ourselves to cut the cord to our ancestry, and that American society as it has evolved is a very traumatic look at what happens when you sever your connection to the soul of your lineage, that you create a soulless society essentially. The fact that we don't have the depth of connection to our ancestral lineages here in America, in his eyes, is a huge reason as to why our society is so paper thin. And so I want to take a second here, and I'm going to let you speak to what this moment really held for you and how truly special it was. I just want to reiterate the fact that you're going from this really closed state of being really depressed, being addicted, being in a really deep rut that I'm sure you can speak the words exactly to this, but that you felt little to no connection to anything. And so now here you are having this really sweet plant experience that is, in your words, cracking you open so gently, and it just like breaks my heart, like thinking about how sweet and pure that is. And if you want to just speak to that, if you want to speak to the true depth of what coming all that way through all of that shit, we'll just call it shit, and touching that sweetness, like.
Yeah, I really love that you're using that word sweetness, because that is so true for my experience. And I'll just say, like, I really agree with you about our disconnection from, our understanding and our relationship with our ancestors. And, for me, this was like the beginning. This was like an opening of a much greater understanding of what my relationship to the ancestors and my ancestors took over, the arc of my life, which is still something that's very much unfolding for me today, because I'm very, actively engaged at this time in my life, much more recently, with really diving into my own ancestral, connection and healing in a way that you could say that I'm attempting to learn how to do. But for me, being with the Huichol people who, they're just they never lost that connection. And so for me to see these real relationships, this real modeling of a constant honoring, not only of their lineage, familiar ancestors, but to the spirits of place where we were and how we had to honor and address them, and to the beings inside the rocks, which I got to see and I had visions of, and I didn't fully understand all that I was being open to even in those moments. these kind of insights have really unfolded really over time for me. But, seeing, I would say, what I would call the other than human ancestors, and having the spirits of place and of the land appear to me. What happened to me was my heart broke open and I did a lot of crying and beautiful tears of just joy and gratitude for remembering the truth. And it really I did come from a place where I had prior been closed down and shut off. And I feel like what happened with this, the truth of the kind of the core of it, is that it got me back into my heart and back into my feelings and to my emotionality, because that was very much shut down. I did a really good job of shutting that down. And not only these experiences, but the Huichol people themselves are deeply emotional. They wear their emotions openly, and they taught me and reminded me how important that vulnerability is and how sweet and beautiful this level of seeing these, grown men crying and just loving and sharing. It was just really mind-blowing for me. I didn't have that growing up in Connecticut.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really sweet, very sweet.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
And I just add something that just is just popping in my mind, and I just want to say it here before, so I don't forget, is that, on this subject of our ancestors, which I do feel is so crucial for us to try the best we can to remember those connections in whatever way that might be for us. But I want to say that in my dream life, this is all the times that I was able to connect. And the more I do this work, I have dreams often where my ancestors come in, and they come in sometimes in groups when I've uncovered some part of my ancestry or done some work. And sometimes they come in, I'm having, ancestors that I hadn't met before. And they're communicating to me in my dream time. And I just feel so grateful for this connection that's kind of like a bridge got built. And, and sometimes, I feel their gratitude. Sometimes they just come to show their gratitude in the dreams that they're being remembered. And so I just wanted to have a moment to say that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing.
Is there a quality to those dreams that stands out to you, Kris? Like, people can dream about ancestors in general as, just say, like a dream theme. And it's not necessarily, dreams can create these wild and fantastic stories. And it's basically an internal process. But there are dreams that pull in these, like what you experienced. You felt the actual, call it the spirit of your ancestors, enter into your dreams. Is there something about the quality of those dreams that you could share with us that might help other people to be able to identify when they're also dreaming in the same way?
Yeah, I would say that when I have somebody who has crossed over and they come back, usually there's a quality it's a very quiet quality. It's not like my normal dreaming where things are symbolic and there's a lot going on. Usually they're very focused. They're kind of quiet. Often they're telepathic, and there's just a moment of knowing or acknowledgement, especially if somebody's, has come to say that they're okay. And sometimes these other dreams where my ancestors are coming, they're coming like with a special task or a job, or they're coming to help me. Oftentimes they're coming to write down the story, because so much of my family story has never been told or written down. And I just feel there's just this something different there that's definitely not as busy as my normal day-to-day dreams.
Yeah, the telepathic quality is one of the hallmarks of it, and people say that there's an energy to the dream that has a different quality to it. And like you said, it's less symbolic and more of a straightforward exchange between you and them. Like you start, when you get into dream characters and stuff, you can start to like see like, yeah, that character is acting a lot like it's playing a role. It's an actor. It's in a story. You're participating in the story. It's a standard sort of dream. It's symbolic. And then you get into the ones where you go, this has a quality to it. There's a feeling to the dream. There's an energy, and the symbolism sort of disappears. And it's more of like, would you say that you feel an exchange of energy between you and them?
I definitely have felt that sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
And just sort of a nonverbal knowing.
Nonverbal, yeah. There's a lot of, nonverbal. Yeah, there's just a knowing.
Did you do anything to induce those dreams? Obviously you did a lot of ceremony and releasing, letting go of things. But was there anything else that you would say that you did to instigate those dreams, or to, shall we say, kind of facilitate or make them possible?
No, not necessarily. I'm just starting to notice now that when I'm actively engaged in some kind of ancestral work, let's say, then they just come. They're watching. And so I'm not trying to incubate them in any sort of way. And I'll just say too, there's something I remember that Jeremy always talked about. What he started to notice in a lot of the dreams that he'd been participating in for over a long period of years was that when people had dreams where there were groups of people that were sort of just in the background, or like faceless, sort of nameless groups, that he often thought that those were the ancestors, just being part, offering their support, or being somehow part involved in the dream. And there are certain times where I have felt that I've noticed that as well. I don't know if either of you have ever experienced that.
You just put a piece in place for me. Thank you, Kris. I wondered who those people were. Why are you so interested in what's going on in my dream? They're making their presence known without being obtrusive about it. And they're not necessarily there to play a role in the dream. They're there to, would you say, offer their support?
Yeah, that's my sense of it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, there's so much that I would love to dive into the ancestral dreams, because I've been having a lot of that happen over the last year, but I really want to let Jason pick back off with helping us get up to speed with where the dreams start really coming into play for you within this. So we got this big kind of opening happening for you, where your heart is cracking open and you're really touching base back with your soulfulness. And which of the dreams would you like to start that conversation off with?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the pink river dolphins was a pretty special dream for me.
That's where I was going to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's hear about it.
Okay. So I had this dream that I was in a different country and I'm outdoors. I'm all alone, but there's a lot of people around. In this nature setting, it felt like a place where people were going to recreate, like, on vacation or something like that. And there was water there, but the land around felt dry and hilly, kind of rolling mountains. And all of a sudden, I started to get a sense that I'd been here before. I became this very strong deja vu feeling came over me. And I remembered that I had had this dream before. And I knew that if I walked away from this area to another area of the dream landscape, that I'd come to a place where the pink river dolphins lived. And I become so incredibly excited that I remembered this. It felt like a feat just in of itself to be able to retrieve that memory. And now nothing is as important as finding those dolphins. So I begin to move really fast. And it felt like to me in the dream that I remember that the landscape was changing with me as I moved with my thoughts and intentions. So a little bit of sort of the fabric of the dream shifting, which is not typical for me to be able to see. But soon enough, I see the river and I go to the edge and suddenly 3 pink river dolphins appear. And they are so excited and so happy and grateful to see me as much as I am to see them, because we're friends, we know each other. And it felt like we hadn't seen each other for a very long time. And they start speaking to me in their language, and we just talk and talk and talk. And there's just this feeling of wild excitement. They are excited, and it's just this overwhelming, joyous reunion. And it's just something that I've never forgotten. And in a dream like this, it's kind of hard to even describe in words how deeply I felt this joy. It was like not something I'm used to feeling, like this much joy in my heart, but that's really the lasting impact that dream had on me.
Yeah, you get the sense it shows pink dolphins. I mean, people typically think of dolphins more of in the, kind of the bluish gray hues, but the pink dolphin is very much, it gives me the sense of the quality of the heart. And then you talk about the emotion that comes with the dream and the love and the joy that you felt with them. So it seems like that the dream really was emphasizing that part of it by choosing to make them that color. Or maybe we could look at it as they chose to present themselves to you that way, because you're encountering something that's coming from a deeper place within you that has an independence to it. The psychic Edgar Cayce talked about groups of 3s in dreams as representing something from the divine. There's like the Trinity, and there's 3s. And a lot of old sort of scriptural and spiritual stories will just say that good things come in 3s. So to see that play out in your dream like that seems to affirm, at least in this case, that the 3 dolphins, like, can you imagine if it was just 2 dolphins or 4? There's just something about 3 that seems really appropriate for a scene like that. So that really struck me, the numbers, that there's 3 of them, and also the color of them. And then of course, just the amazing exchange that you had with them. And apparently you speak dolphin.
Apparently, yes.
And it's kind of obvious when they're chittering, you know, and they're all happy and dancing around in the water that they're expressing something joyful, you know. But I was just reading the other day that dolphins, they refer to each other by name.
Mm.
They have they have names, and there's a certain sound that they'll make that they don't make other times. Like researchers have been able to identify that they talk to each other. You know, like they refer to each other by name. I mean, if that's not a sign of consciousness and, you know, like sentience, I don't know what is. So wow, what a beautiful dream.
I don't know how this will land for you, but I was just in Chicago over Father's Day weekend, and we went to the Shed Aquarium in Chicago, and I was watching this video. Well, sorry, no, there was a performance that the dolphins were doing, and they showed that inside of their fins, not their dorsal, but like their, for lack of a better word, their arms, that there's a skeletal hand that looks very humanoid-like.
Ooh.
And what they said was that scientists think that maybe dolphins were once land animals that moved into the ocean. And so I don't know, that something just like moved through me when I was thinking about that memory. As far as if we look at this beautiful, I love that you used the word reunion. Regardless of what is happening in this dream, I think just that feeling of coming home to something is so powerful for you here, especially with the fact that your feelings are coming back online. So if dolphins are an animal that potentially went into the ocean from the land, this is kind of like you re-entering your feelings, the vastness of your feelings, in that same way that they're now water creatures. Now you're a water creature. I don't want to totally superimpose, because I feel like this is one of those dreams where you shouldn't even try to vulture it apart. It's like, it's so holy and so sacred that it doesn't matter what it means. Like the feeling of it is the gift of it. But yeah, I just thought I was like, whoa, that's kind of an interesting, interesting notion.
I really like that you said that, actually, because the couple of things. So after I had this dream, I don't know if I knew at that time, but so the only place I think that we find pink river dolphins, are in the Amazon. They actually exist.
Oh wow!
And I didn't know that then. But this dream, I feel like, was the beginning of a long series of dream themes that have a theme that has happened throughout my life and is still continuing now, to do with water and to do with the creatures of the ocean. So I dream about water, being in the water, being underwater, breathing underwater, having a life under the water, and having whales come. It is like a ongoing, constant theme. And so I feel like this was the first introduction into my connection to water and the animals and the beings of the ocean. So I'm a water person. You were right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, there's a dream that you had about the orca whales and the happy dance. It seems to be related. So do you think this would be a good time to talk about that dream?
Sure. That dream came a lot later. I'm just trying to find it here. Yeah, so that dream came later. I had that dream in 2006. And that was when I was trying to conceive my second child. And so in that dream, there is a long river, and I see a pod of orcas swimming upstream. At the top of the river is a lake, and I see that the pod of orcas reach the lake with success when they get there. And when they do, they all jump out of the water, fully breached in unison. They are happy, really happy, and they're celebrating the fact that they made it to the lake. I can tell by how they jump, how they move their bodies, and the looks on their faces, and the feeling that they have, that they're doing a happy dance so that I will see it. I can't believe they're mimicking back to me what I do in my waking life. And the next thing I know, I'm under the water in the ocean, and a mermaid swims up to me. She has on a necklace, and instead of a pendant, there's a very small, beautiful little fish swimming around in circles. She tells me that my baby is a special gem of the sea. I wake up, and I know I'm pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
And it was funny because when it finally dawned on me that the whales represented the sperm reaching the lake, which was the egg, I was like, "Oh, this is perfect."
I'm glad you went there before I did, because that's how I was when I'm reading that, and I'm going, wait, you're trying to conceive a child, and you're talking about these orcas that are swimming upstream, and then they make it to a lake. And I'm going, okay, basically finding the womb,
Yes.
and then, they jump out of the water. So now they're kind of into a different state of being. So that means conception has happened. And then the mermaid comes up to you, and the fish swimming around in the pendant, that seems like a really like a heck of a metaphor for the process of conception, both the physical side of it, but also the spiritual side of it. And I'm wondering, did you have a boy or a girl?
I had a girl.
So mermaid girl. And did she turn out to be a gem?
She is definitely a gem. And I actually wanted to name her Gemma, but that wasn't what her name was.
Wow.
That's
well,
so
you
sweet.
mentioned, that there was this interactive, co-creative aspect of the dream. And when we think of a creation process like conception, but also that we've had somebody else on our show who had a dream before she got pregnant, before she ended up adopting a child. This was Zivia, and she had this moment in the dream where she decided, this is what I want to do. Even though at the time she said that she had no idea that she ever wanted to have a child. She was actually dead set against it.
Wait, did you say adopted?
Yeah, didn't she? Or
No.
her partner, sorry. In a way, her partner, she ended up having a partner who was pregnant. And so a female-female relationship. And so in a way, they had the child together.
Yeah.
I kind of thought of it as adopting, but it's not technically. But there was a moment in the dream where she decided that she wanted to affirm, that's like, well, here's this baby. Do I want it or not? And in the dream, she's just like, yes. Even though I never wanted to be a mother, here I am. And I just wanted to make that note that we've seen this before with other guests, and I've seen it with people that I've interacted with and talked with them about their dreams. There's this deeply creative aspect that goes into the creation process. Like, you decide this is what you wanted. This is something that you want, and you affirm it, and you do it while you're dreaming, and then whammo, you're pregnant. Or it could even be years later, but that baby ends up becoming part of your life. It's not just a symbol or something like that. It's actually, you're actually dreaming in a way. The dream becomes part of the creative process of making that child come into your life. So I think that's a really powerful thing that happened to you, Kris.
Yeah, and I loved that interview that Steve did, and I listened to that as well. And I just wanted to say that I feel like, these kinds of dreams, they're very common. The what you're talking about, or precognitive, pre-knowing. This even happened to me with my first child. I'll just say it really quick, is that I had a dream. I'm not sure how long before I got pregnant with him, but I had a dream that a little boy showed up, and he was about 5 years old, and had curly blonde hair, and I saw exactly what he was wearing, and he was just looking at me and just smiling, and that was really it. There was just a feeling, and at that time, I just thought that was just a regular dream. I didn't know what it meant. But after I had my son, when he got to be about that age, I remembered the dream. And, it was exactly how he looked at that time. The same hair, the same blonde curly hair. So it took me all those years later to remember the dream and saying, wow, he showed up there. He introduced himself to me. So I think these kinds of things are not uncommon.
Yeah, well,
I
kind
know
of
they're
going
not.
along with
Yeah.
that same. Sorry, Jay, just real quick.
No, it's okay.
I had a similar kind of experience. I looked up when I had this dream recently because I thought it was after Eric and I had moved in together, but it actually was really early in our relationship. Couldn't believe how early it was that I had this dream. She lived in Minneapolis. I was living in New York City at the time. We were doing long distance thing, and right after the first time she came to visit me in New York, which probably would have been about getting close to 6 months into our relationship, I had a dream that me and her were walking just down a sidewalk with our two children. There was an older boy and a younger girl, and that's exactly what we have right now. And oh man, rereading that dream was so beautiful. The way that I wrote it was just so gorgeous. I have a very faint actual memory of it now. That was that would have been like 2009, 2010 period. But yeah, just seeing the way that I wrote about the kind of love that I had for these kids is exactly the quality that I have for them. And to have, that was almost 13 years ago. I had no idea at all, like, what kind of cracking of the heart happens when you have a kid. That was nowhere in my consciousness, but I got a glimpse of it in that dream, which I thought was just so moving to read this many years later, and to have that kind of love present in my heart now was just like, oof, like, man, it's just like so incredibly interesting and beautiful to see how prophetic, I guess, is maybe the word for it, but just like how informative dreams can be as to like shape you, kind of like what we talk about here all the time on this podcast. Like that was preparation in a way, and maybe in some capacity that was, like Jason was getting at just a few minutes ago, maybe in some ways that is a contract that I'm making in that dream, where I'm seeing and feeling that experience, and I'm like a hard yes with it, even though it's not going to be for quite a few years down the road that actually becomes a reality for us, but that it begins that motion forward to, like, yeah, I definitely want that love in my heart, and you move forward in your life attempting to capture that in some capacity. But yeah, that was my little 2 cents there.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, that's with Zivia, and it's the robed woman and the unusual motherhood journey that came out in May. That was our May episode. So anyone that wants to refer back to that can get another powerful story about dreams that foretold the future, where you were a future as a parent. So if anybody wants to catch up on that episode, it's there waiting for you.
Yeah. So moving forward from the pink river dolphins,
and the orca whales doing their happy dance.
Well, I guess, real quick before we leave that whole story, I know a little bit about the story behind your happy dance. If you want to, there's something that I feel is really special about this whole way that the dream is mirroring that back to you that I really kind of want to accent real quick before we move on. Do you want to tell your whole thing about your happy dance that you were doing?
Sure. Yeah. So the thing about the happy dance is that there came a time when I decided that whenever a synchronicity would happen in my life, or something that I had been wanting or thinking manifested, that I was going to acknowledge this to, sort of the greater universe, that I'm noticing that it's happening and I want more of this situation to happen. Mm-hmm. And the way I was going to acknowledge it was I jump up in the air, I put my fist high in the air, and I just kind of jump up and down with a smile on my face, and that's my little happy dance signal to the universe. And so, and that's, so I knew that when the orcas did that, it was the same weird, in a same weird whaley way, they were doing the same thing, which I found fascinating. It was like a part of myself was mirroring back to me, so that I would know what they were doing, that they succeeded in their task.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. That was pretty fascinating.
It's really fascinating. Yeah.
So let me just flesh out what I wanted to say about this. Was I just think this is such a just one of those experiences in a dream that just really, I don't know, you feel really seen in this, where the intelligence that is behind those whales, behind the dream, the soul behind it, however you want to look at the more autonomous nature of the dream, is here with you in this moment that is so joyous. And I don't know if you had any difficulties in conceiving your second child that makes this more of like a really magical moment for you, but for me it just seems like, wow, like you're happy for me, and you're celebrating with me in this way that you're reflecting this same kind of behavior that I do when I see you. When I see you, the soul behind this world that is trying to communicate with me, that it is now celebrating you in the same way, where it's like I see you in what you're bringing into this world. And there's this, I just think that interplay of the meeting happening here between you and this soul of the world, or of your dream, or however you want to look at what that is behind this whale that is trying to communicate that beautiful message to you, that is like, yes, fuck yes, like so I don't know, with me saying that, if you have anything to add to that touches you in a way that you would like to expound upon, then please feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say I really agree, and it's actually a nice point to highlight as an example of, like some of your other guests have talked about, that, the dreams are much more than we realize. They are alive and they are interactive. It's a co-creative process, like Scott Sparrow talks about. And even, I think the last episode I heard with your guest Jenny said the same. And it, that really illustrates it right there. And it's that larger awareness, reflecting back. And I think it's really neat. And maybe, you know, when people listen to this, they can start to look for those little moments that might be happening in their dreams that they haven't noticed.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's really special when you, I think I've mentioned this in a few different episodes where it's just like our dreams are here with us. They companion us in these really special moments that we have in our lives that largely go uncelebrated. And this is a really special, especially since there is like that behavior, that little happy dance that it can use to kind of level with you in that way where, I'm losing my words, but I think you know exactly where I'm trying to go with this. It's just like, just that more like specific or like personal and like intimate to you way of companioning you in this moment that is so special for this to be a dream that you had that like really highlights the fact that you've conceived. That's like insane to me. That's insanely special. It's just wild.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. And so to kind of bring us, I mean, not that orca whales are not magical at all. That was an absolutely magical dream, but to kind of weave ourselves back into the thread of kind of this whole reclamation of the magical self that's happening for you. We really wanted to touch base on this experience you had in Sedona, which I think brings this really dreamy, magical sense that you're having into like really living color as far as like how it really becomes a waking dream for you. So if we could have you kind of give us the kind of lead up to that experience of you going to Sedona and just tell the story and you can just run right into the dream for us.
Okay, so the lead up, like during that time, I was still traveling in my VW, living a very free lifestyle, and a lot of synchronicity still happening in my life. And I'm not sure that, so somewhere in that time, before I was in Sedona, I had this dream. And I called it the Sedona crystal tree. I'm walking down a forest path, and there seems to be a creek or water nearby. And then I see a cement cistern type of thing as I'm walking, and I walk past it. And then I see a big tree, and I go up to the tree and around the side. And inside the bark of the tree are quartz crystals growing. I see the small crystals and I show my friend, and I'm very happy and very excited to have found them. And then I see there's larger clear crystals with points on the ground at the base of the tree. I pick one up and I put it in my hair. And that was the end of the dream. And so one day when I found myself in Sedona, we were camped out somewhere, and I was having a really beautiful day and a really, I would just say this because I remember this stands out in my mind, which is why I want to say it, is that I was in a state of, I would call it childlike wonder. I was having, and I often did during this time, just days where I felt so free and I looked at the world with such awe. And I remember there was a rainbow and I was just so playful and just full of kind of joy and awe at life and just the beauty around me. And that is how I entered this trail I found myself on, and I was with my friend. And what happened was I started walking down the trail, and then I had the sense of deja vu. And I remembered that I had dreamed this before, and I knew with every step I took what was going to come next for my dream. And sure enough, I saw the cistern, the cement cistern. And I told my friend, like, very excited, like, oh my God, this is exactly from my dream. And next we're going to come to a tree. And there was the tree. And I went up to the tree, and believe it or not, inside the bark of that tree was a crystal. And I took the crystal out of the tree, just like I did in my dream. And I couldn't believe it. And I showed my friend, and it was a small crystal. And I still have it to this day. So that was a kind of experience where dream life and waking life, the boundaries between them really dissolved. And I would say it's not necessarily a common experience like that where I actually get a physical object that was from my dream. But that's what happened.
Did it seem like the crystal had been left there by someone?
Well, I mean, I can only imagine that. Yeah. I mean, if you're ever going to find a crystal sticking into a tree, it would be in Sedona, right? Like, what other place is that going to? So yeah, probably. That's what I imagine. I mean, it certainly wasn't growing there.
I mean, I did hear about somebody who found their wedding ring growing around a carrot in their garden that they'd lost like 10 years before. You know, like they'd lost it in the ground. They built a garden there, and then a carrot grows out of the ground, and there's her wedding ring. You know,
wow.
So I'm picturing that maybe there are these crystals in the ground, you know, that got picked up as the tree is growing. But then I'm like, well, maybe is it more likely that somebody left it there? So that now brings in another agent into this scenario where you could dream about this. How long before it happened? From the time the dream happened until you were in Sedona, how long did it take?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know, actually. I want to say it was almost like a year before, but it might have not been that long.
And so if somebody left that crystal there, unless it had been sitting there for that entire year, then it means it happened after you had the dream. So so now you've got this other factor coming into it that means that somebody else's life in a way was a participant in that dream. Even though they weren't in the dream, they were part of making it come true. Can you imagine the person walking along going, they're holding a crystal in their pocket and they go, hey, let's see that little nook on that tree? I think I'm just going to walk over there and I'm going to stick this crystal over here. Yeah. For whatever reason they have in their mind at the time. And then they decide that they would go and do it. And then it turns into this magical experience that you end up having.
Or even better, they're like, oh my God, I don't know why I feel like I have to do this, but I really need to leave this crystal right here in this tree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's going to come walking. Yeah, go ahead, Kris.
Oh, well, I just hadn't thought about that aspect of it, actually. That just throws a whole new twist. I love it.
Yeah. Because whoever left it there, I imagine, I'm just imagining this little hippie person all like, I don't know, dude. I just feel like I really got to leave this here. For some reason, I can't figure it out. But it has to happen, dude. It's just such a fun little image in my mind.
Yeah, and what were, the odds that I was going to just find myself right there on that exact path? I mean, it was just meant to happen, clearly. Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Because, I mean, there's plenty of times where, like, I feel like I don't have any, like, real thoughts in my head of things that I've actually specifically left somewhere hoping that somebody else will find it. But I feel like I've had moments in my life like that where I'm like, I don't know why, but I really need to, like, leave this here, or, like, this is for someone else. Or I know I wish I could remember a specific example of what that is, but so for me, like, I have no idea who ended up benefiting or receiving whatever that moment would have been. And I just think this is like a cool look at like the magic of those kind of moments where you're on the receiving end of somebody else's intuitive feeling of, I have to leave this for somebody else. This is going to be really meaningful. I don't know why, but I feel like I have to do it. And so maybe to like, if anybody out there who's listening has a moment like that coming up in their lives, like, who knows, like, this could be like a really defining moment.
Maybe you're part of somebody else's dream and you don't know it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so cool. One thing I want to ask you is, so you did mention how ecstatic you were as it's unfolding in your waking life, and you're like, holy crap, I cannot believe this is really like if you could speak more directly to like exactly what that feeling was that you were having, of feeling like something so much larger was at play here. Like, what exactly did that touch within you as far as feeling like there was something truly magical happening?
Well, so are you talking about like my state of kind of wonder before that happened?
Yeah, kind of like, I mean, if you could speak more specifically to, because I don't know if anybody, I haven't personally had an experience like this happen where a dream was that specific to something that happened in my life. And I know if it was happening, there would be a very specific quality of wonder and awe and holy shitness that I was just wondering if you could speak to, like, what exactly, I mean, how crazy was that to you? Like, if you could just speak to the mind fuck that might have been.
Yeah, well, I feel like in a way it was, the wonder that I was feeling, it's almost like that was how I was in this state. I was still coming out of these experiences from Mexico, crossing the border, traveling all around the States. And, I just felt like in that moment, I was feeling wonder with just life and nature. And I was having a lot of fun. I was with friends. And, I was a barefoot free hippie girl for sure. I mean, that was me. And when that rainbow happened, I started running like a child. Like I was going to try to catch the end of the rainbow because, if you've ever seen a rainbow that lands really low and it's almost like it's right there in front of you, you can see it. And of course, you're never going to be able to catch it. But I wanted to try anyway. And so we were running around like this just crazy fun, in this wonder state. And I feel like that state of being, this wonder and awe kind of feeling, I feel like that is what almost in a way allowed the deja vu to happen. It's almost like it put me in a certain vibration or frequency, I guess, in a way you could say, that then triggered this deja vu as I was walking down the trail.
Wow.
So there's just something to be said about, I feel like, those states of being and how that puts, at least for me, when I've experienced that, it puts me in this different sort of interactive relationship with my environment, with nature. And I feel like that is when a dialogue with, the bigger reality can open up. And it's happened to me before. And so when I started noticing I had deja vu and I linked it, because often when states of deja vu come, I don't link it to anything. I just feel like,
Right.
It feels familiar, but I can't place it. But to be able to link it back to a dream felt just exciting, really. And so as I started moving more forward on the path, I was really excited because I knew, I already knew, I just knew it was going to happen. Like I knew as soon as I saw the cistern and the tree, I was like, this is it. There was no doubt in my mind that crystal wouldn't be there. And so when I grabbed it, it was just like, I just felt like, yes, just like, yes, I did it. And it almost felt like there was a feeling of, yes, this feels really magical. But at the same time, it also just felt really natural because I was, this whole thing of this experience and my life and these dreams were really, I feel like what they were really helping me to see is that the things we call magical and mystical and miraculous are actually just natural states of our being. They're our birthright. They are the way we are designed to interact with this world.
Wow. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I'm writing a book on the science of the paranormal right now. And one of the things that I keep encountering is that there's, with a lot of these phenomena, we're tracing it back to consciousness and how it interacts with the physical world. There's this idea that came out of materialism that there is all phenomena can be explained simply through the processes and workings of matter. And when you try to put the human being into that box, there's so many things that don't want to fit in there, and they don't. I mean, such as consciousness itself. It's not just arising out of the brain. But one of the things that we found over and over again on this podcast and through our own experiences of our dreams is that our being seems to be connected out into the world in a way that breaks down those barriers, that makes it so that it seems at times that the outer world, the natural world, is really responding to what we're experiencing internally. Kris, you had a dream and then it came true? Like in the materialist way of looking at things, that's impossible. It would be an extraordinary, this is their explanation would be, it was an extraordinary coincidence that you would dream about a crystal in a tree and then it actually, comes true. But, you look back at the details of that and you go, well, wait a minute. You recognized the landscape as you were starting to get into, this part of Sedona, and you go, wait a minute, I dreamed about this, and right down the path here, we're going to see this and that. And then there's the tree. And you walk up to the tree knowing that crystal is going to be there waiting for you. So it breaks down this idea that everything just works mechanistically and randomly in this world. And that we're actually, in a way, we talk about co-creative dream theory and Scott Sparrow, and well, how about co-creative life theory? Yeah, that we're actually participating this in a way that is, I mean, we keep using the word magical, but is there another word that we can use to describe it? Because if what we're talking about from what we've observed, that we know that it's a real thing. So what better word can we have than magical to describe the way that the world responds to us, to show us that there really is something out there that is the whole, in fact, not just something, but the whole world is, it's like it's aware of us. In the same way that we can get a sense sometimes that there's something in a dream, something, I want to say an intelligence, but is that really the right word? It's a heart. It's a heart, and it's aware of us. It's not just a brain. We're overbrained these days in our society, so it's not just an intelligence that's watching, although it's certainly intelligent, but it's more of that it's giving us these experiences to open up our hearts. So it too is relating to us through our hearts. So I think that's just really fascinating, the way that that played out, and that you've just offered a proof to all those people listening out there who seem, we're living in an age when it seems like the magic in life is trying to be sucked out of it. It's almost like it's purposeful to try to get people to just sort of, fit into this little gray box in this little gray world, and, keep turning the crank so that somebody else can benefit off of the product, from your life and the product of your labor. But and now we've got this counter force that's saying, that may be what it looks like on the surface, but behind the scenes, there really is a magic to this world. And Kris, you've just told us all that it's possible to find it. Have one experience like yours, and for the rest of your life, you know without a doubt, yes, there is a magic to this world. And yes, it is responding to me. And yes, it is trying to give me an experience of knowing myself in a deeply personal, emotional, spiritual way that defies all of that stuff that says, oh, no, the world is just a big machine and let's just keep it turning because some people are getting, fat and happy off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Thank you for sharing. I love these extraordinary stories. And this is what we keep finding over and over. People, I come in and I'm like, I know all the Carl Jung and the theory and, done all this study and stuff. And nobody wants to hear about that crap. They want to hear about I found a crystal in a tree in Sedona after dreaming about it a year before it happened. And then people are like, whoa, are you serious? That actually happened. And you're like, cross my heart, hope to die. It actually happened. And that's where people go. There is something to this. Yeah. There's a magic to it. And Kris, you've also kind of laid out a course. Do you think that you did that, all that work that you did, the dream work, and then down in Mexico and the ancestral work, do you think that in a way that you laid the groundwork so that could happen to you? And do you think that something was speaking to you through that experience?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I think all of my experiences up to there were laying groundwork for that and for, other experiences that were to come after that. And I think there's little moments where we get that are like seeds, right? That then allow something to blossom within us. And that experience certainly was one of those, because like you said, there's no room for doubt there.
Yeah.
Right? I actually have the crystal right here on my dresser. It's there. So yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. That was a really extraordinary experience that you had. And I would definitely be keeping that crystal too. If it were me, for the rest of my life, that is going to be sticking real close to me. And
what kind of crystal was it?
You know what? It's really small, like very tiny, clear quartz crystal. Okay, cool. Yeah. I wish it was one of those bigger ones I had in my dream from the ground, but yeah, and this just kind of makes me, it reminds me about what I had read, all those years before about, or maybe not that many years before, but, from the mystics, from Yogananda and the people who had these sort of what we would call like not normal, anomalous kind of experiences. And those people, that have these mystical sort of experiences or magical, they show us that it's possible. And I've been somebody who's just always been open to the possibility that anything is possible from a pretty early stage. So for me, I never questioned that those things couldn't happen.
Yeah, I think one of the really beautiful things about the way you just told that story was that we saw a really special image of just how swung open the door to your heart had become at this point. You're talking about how playful and joyful you were in this scene. What a beautiful, what a beautiful kind of image to have of you in, where you've come to at this point in your journey. I think that was a really beautiful show.
Thank you.
Yeah, for just how much this whole process that you've been going through really opened for you. I think that's really marvelous. So, I don't know. Where do we want to move into from this point?
Kris, why don't you pick a dream that we're talking about the magic that can come through a dreaming life, and you've had many of them. There's so many here that you've sent us. We couldn't, if we had another 3 hours, I don't think we could really do justice to them. So is there one that speaks to you right now as a good place to insert into the narrative?
So I have this one dream that it stands out. And in some ways, it's a more recent dream, but it almost feels, in some ways, it's a little bit of a culmination of how this magical sort of quality and the shamanic quality of my dream life has continued over my life and still continues now. So I'm just going to share this. It's called Stand in the Power of Who You Are. And this felt like a pretty big dream for me. So I'm standing on a road outdoors. It's daytime. It's warm and sunny. I see what looks like a large painting or a window. And it has 3 whales in the ocean with their heads sticking out of the water, spy hopping. And these are minke whales. They were so still and almost camouflaged that I hadn't even seen them at first. And I had the thought that this has been in front of me all along, that they were there. At first, I just saw a painting and didn't see the whales, but then I noticed the whales. And I'm looking at the image for a minute when then I realize all of a sudden that it's not 2-dimensional. It's not a painting, but it's actually another dimension that I'm seeing into. And these whales are alive. And as soon as I have this thought, this recognition, the whales come to life and they move towards me through the painting into the space where I stand. They stick their noses out far so that they can touch me. I rub their heads, and then they seem to soften and change into a puppy feeling, like when you love your puppy. They had that quality. They were receiving my love. And I talked to them, and I told them that they had to go back in the water. And so immediately they listened to what I said. They went down to the bottom of the ocean, and the 3 of them lay down in unison in formation. And I had this feeling again, like we knew each other, we were friends. And I'm filled again with that feeling of so much happiness and so much excitement that we found each other, that I recognize them, and that this interaction happened. And at that same moment, I suddenly feel this incredible sensation of sharp but gentle claws as they land so lightly on the top of my head that they gave me goosebumps. And I realized that an owl has just landed on my head. But I'm surprised at how light this large owl feels. And I'm not scared at all. It's big, it's soft, it's brownish, and it's adorned with all these ribbons tied on it, as if the shaman people had sent sent it or prayed with it, and it was a special bird. At the same time it landed on my head, a strong female voice whispers, which was the owl, "Now hold me above your head and stand in the power of who you are." And at that moment, I knew that I was supposed to reach up, grab the owl by its feet, and in one single motion, swoop my arm in a huge arc to the ground where the owl would go upside down, then raise it high and straight above my head. I knew there was a trick to do it properly, and I attempted, even though I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I tried. And then I felt like I wasn't sure if I did it right. I wasn't sure. I was a little worried maybe that I had injured the owl. So I took it into a field and I set it down, and I think the owl was fine. And then I started running swiftly through the woods on a track, and I felt light like a deer or an animal, and I navigated the forest floor well. And that's the end of my dream.
Whew. Wow.
Wow, sister. Yeah.
I love that dream. I love that dream so much.
I bet. That sounds freaking awesome.
You know what? There's a lot that sticks out to me here, but one of the things is that you are so instinctively walking your way through the dream and just knowing that there are certain things that need to happen. Like, telling him to go back into the water, to start with. Like, that doesn't, it seems to kind of come out of nowhere, but it shows that subconsciously you're understanding how to navigate through this place. And then with the owl, and you're trying to sort of move it like the way that you're trying to swing the owl around, that there's a certain motion or movement that you're supposed to do. And then just knowing to go and jump out onto the, go running off on the path, like out into the forest or the woods or whatever it was. Like, it amazes me how well you knew exactly what to do at the moment, so that the dream, like in response to what was happening in the dream, and then it triggers things to happen in response. So I'm just really like, do you see how that could go back into the theme of coming into your own power? Because isn't it a lot of what that means, at least for me, there comes a point when you're just kind of sure of what you're doing, and you don't have to rationally explain why you're sure. You just know this is the right thing to do in this moment. Maybe kind of like that person that left that crystal for you, like out of nowhere, they just, and they're following that instinct. Did you have that sense of something in your dream, Kris, that was informing your actions in that way?
I did feel, it wasn't until, to be honest, to looking back at this dream later, that I recognized that quality that you're talking about, that this wasn't a lucid dream, and yet I had a lot of sort of agency and action that I took that then created another action. So had I not really, noticed the whales and had that interaction, maybe the owl wouldn't have landed on my head. I don't know. But it just seems, there was an instinctual nature, that I did have. And, I think the whole thing that stands out is that, when the owl says, "Now stand in the power of who you are," is really saying, you've had all this experience, you've had all this opening, magic is real, just go do it. Just go be you. Don't doubt. And, that's something I've struggled with all my life is, really claiming that and really standing in my power. I'm still unfolding into that. And I don't know that, that's an ongoing process, but I agree with what you said.
Well, Stephen, anywhere you want to go with this?
Yeah. Personally, I love owl dreams. I've had quite a few that have been pretty meaningful for me, and I just really love the image and the feeling of not seeing it show up, but all of a sudden having the talons in your head. Like, oh man, that was like so cool to like be on the receiving end of hearing that. That was like, whoa. And I love, there's so much about this whole interaction with the owl that I absolutely love. I just, the fact that it is sinking its talons, kind of attaching itself to your head. I mean, the fact that it's on your head already kind of feels like a crown of some sort. And just the fact that it whispers that particular thing in your ear is just like, whoa, that's pretty chilling. I don't know. I think everything you just said about the owl just felt so spot on as far as, the magic. You've seen it so crystal clearly. It's time for you to wear your crown, to stand in your power, and to take ownership, full ownership of who you are and what you're here to bring into this world. I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful dream. When exactly was this dream?
This dream was in 2017.
I can't tell you how many people have brought dreams from 2017 to this podcast. The ones I'm thinking of specifically, Leah, a lot of her dreams happened in 2017. She was the story about the Amazon woman, and a lot of my personal story of coming into my power, that whole Grinch story that I told, the big death experience that really climaxes in that story happened in 2017. I think Alaya, a couple of her really big potent dreams were in 2017. I don't know what it was about that year, but there was some real heavy big things happening that year. So that's really, really cool. I don't know if what I said landed for you at all, but me just looking at the owl in that way of, I don't know, being kind of like a crown, or inviting you to wear your own crown, to stand in your power, I think is, if that were my dream, that's where I would be sinking into with that.
Yeah, I love that. I love my owl dreams as well. And it's just reminding me, hearing you reflect on this, that I do a lot of, drawing and sketches in my dream, and I paint. So sometimes my dreams become paintings, and this certainly was one that wanted to be turned into art. And yeah, it's just so beautiful seeing this big owl just standing on top of the head with all these colorful ribbons hanging off it. There's something, it was really, felt like a really big dream, a powerful dream for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for those reflections.
Yeah.
Birds are often symbols of messengers of spirit. The way that they obviously they have the power of flight, and they can sometimes sort of a nonverbal communication with them. That if you've ever felt that sense of connection with the birds that decide they're gonna, your home, the trees around your home, or become their home too, like And so there can be this sort of, call it maybe kind of like a symbiotic relationship type of relationship with him. So, and then there's also many traditions that, like, after people have died, a loved one has died, and then there will be a bird that comes and visits, and it's just the presence of the bird itself seems to be a message.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a really heavy vibe of that from the owl in your dream. And of course I would be amiss if I didn't, give props to the owl there, because I'm known as Rat Owl. So
Yeah. Yeah, baby.
That's my bird, man. Yeah.
See, the owl wanted to be recognized here tonight.
Yeah, there's probably out in the swallows out in front of my house here. There's a little family of them. They peck right into the side of the saguaro cactus, and they turn it into their home, their little den. And they live right, and they can be like, 15 feet off the ground. And so they're very well protected up there. Because in the end, if you look at what an owl is, it's mostly feathers. When you get down beneath all that, and you're like, there's not a whole lot of bird here with most of them. I mean, they're actually little tiny creatures. And but yeah, I bet if I opened my front door right now, the owls would be hooting, because they're 50 feet away down in my front yard in a saguaro cactus. But yeah, what a beautiful way of delivering that message and affirming something for you. Another thing that really struck me is the way that the painting came alive. And I'm wondering, Kris, has that deepened you in your art? Or did you feel like there was something from that dream imagery that seemed to be an extension of, like I'm a writer, and there are times when I get into a flow state where I'm not just staring at a screen and pumping words onto it. Like the screen kind of opens up for me in a way, and whatever words come out of that process, that's almost like a side effect of an internal alchemy that's happening. And I'm wondering if you felt like maybe after having that dream, or maybe before, the canvas in a way came alive for you and was no longer just this two-dimensional surface. It became three-dimensional in the sense of like you're really putting yourself into it in a way that makes it more alive than just this two-dimensional thing. It seems like the dream did that for a reason, and I'm wondering if it relates back to your sense of yourself as an artist or as a creative person.
Yeah, damn, dude, I totally missed that.
Yeah, and you know what? I miss that as well, and I'm so glad that you said that, because I'm not realizing this until right now, that 2017, when I had this dream, was the year I started painting. And I'd been having dreams all along of seeing my art in dreams, right? Viewing my art here and there. But I never thought that I was an artist. I've never called myself an artist. And I started painting in 2017. And the only thing that I learned, I'm not formally trained. I took intuitive painting classes. And so the way and the style that I paint is that I go to a blank canvas and I have no plan. I've never planned a painting. I don't know what I'm going to paint when I get there. And so it's very much exactly like you're saying, is when I paint, I allow the spontaneous expression to come out either through the brush or through the movement, or sometimes the image, I can't believe that I didn't see this. The images sometimes just come right out of the painting at me. Like I'm surprised. Like I didn't even know, oh my God, that's a wing? What? There's a wing there. Wow, I'm going to paint a bird now. And that's exactly how I paint. And you're so right. This painting, this dream, it really did speak to that.
And it brought you into your own power in a way. Like, wow, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so now that you're having this big epiphany about this whole thing, how does that line now land for you? Like what the owl says, like how does that weave its way into this whole epiphany you're having?
I feel like it's it very much kind of it's speaking to what we've been talking about all along, really, is that there's a much bigger thing going on than just us in this reality. There's something else that's interacting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can call it the awareness behind the dream, or you can call it the higher consciousness or the soul of the world, or, you know, the creative spirit that is interacting and at play with me in this, you know, process. When I get into the flow state of the creative process with art, there's something else there that's moving it. Just like Jason was saying with writing, something else opens up. It's like what wants to come through us from the soul of the world, you could say, in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because 2017 is when my music came back online and was when my dreams started inspiring my music. So I'm seeing some really wild parallel between the two of us. That's really, really cool. And I'm so excited that you didn't see this in this dream, because that is, oh man, that's so cool that you were able to have that on our show.
Yeah, I really thank you. That was really intuitive of you to pick that out.
Well, that's why I love Jason. Every time I share dreams with him, I think that I got it down pretty good. He's like, well, what about this? And I'm like, holy... He just sees the thing that I missed, and I love him for it.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
I feel like whoever it was in Sedona who left the crystal in that tree, sometimes you just do things and you don't know why at the moment. It's just there. It pops into the mind, you know, something you feel in your heart, and it just feels right. So you go with it, and then something else gives the increase, you know, like it helps to make that magic happen. There's something I've been learning from the Edgar Casey people, and it really struck me. It basically said that you bring the best of yourself to the world as best you can every day, and you create the conditions, and then something else gives the increase. So you're not thinking like, you know, like people get into manifesting and they're like, I want $1 million, you know, or I want, you know, I don't just want a sports car. I want my favorite you know, like they get real specific, and they start putting all these expectations on it. And I look at it and I go, you step back from that for a minute. It's good to want, you know, it's okay to want those things. It's great, but you just do what you like. You put yourself in the right position, make yourself the best person living day by day that you can do, and then allow for the increase to come to you. So in an odd sort of way, when I worked my way through a dream like that, I'm relying on something else to make the magic happen. You know, I feel like a big clod sometimes when it comes to this stuff, you know, a big block of wood, you know, hello, anybody home, you know, and then somehow, some way, something uses what I do to make magic out of it. So, you know,
well, I like what you just said there, because one of our previous guests, Jonathan Hyland, he had put this reel on Instagram that was so brilliant. He was talking about how every time he goes into a dream working session with somebody, he has no idea what the dream means, obviously, right? And he's terrified because there's no way to know, right? Until you start peeling back the layers with the person who had it. And you got to, it's such like a trust fall exercise that, you know, you really have to go into real curious, because you can't really, I mean, you can think that you know somebody's dream, but until you really are prodding them over the details about it, you really are in the dark. And especially for us dream workers, it is kind of an uncomfortable feeling at first, because you're like looking at this dream and you're like, Jesus, I mean, there's things that I can kind of look at, hopefully. Sometimes dreams lob easy symbols at you, but I think most of the time we are pretty in the dark about it, and it isn't until all of a sudden the light bulbs start clicking that all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, all right, now we have like a frame to go off from here that we can look at it under this lens, and then all the pieces start kind of falling together. But yeah, I just really love that idea that he had of like, every time you enter into a dream working session with somebody, like, you really have no clue. You have no clue where this is really going to go.
It's like a jam session in a way, you know, when you're making music with people and you don't, it's like, okay, well, let's start with A minor or whatever, you know, a nice G chord. Okay. And then you just start proceeding from there and playing off of each other's ideas. And then there's a, you know, kind of a magic that happens when you have the right musicians together. Then, you know, it's going to end up in a good place. Then again, I've been in jam sessions that went nowhere. So, you know, Kris, you seem to have an instinct for this. You do dream work. Do you work with people and their dreams? You came out of the Jeremy Taylor school, and I'm just thinking, if you're not working with dreams already with people, then you should be.
No, I am. And it's interesting hearing you talk about this, because, you know, I of course too feel the same way when I'm working with someone's dreams, to just really feel like, wow. But you know, one of the things I learned from Jeremy is that when we, you know, I really try to take a dream in deeply, and, you know, take it in as if it's my own, because, you know, what Jeremy used to say is it goes through the filter of our imagination as soon as we hear someone else's dream. So in a sense, it does become our dream. And then, you know, when I really let myself sort of move into my body, into my feelings, and just kind of feel my way through the dream, and then kind of like you're saying, just, you know, share from just, you know, out of curiosity and just listening and kind of, you know, just trying to be open, you eventually find your way down a path. And it's an interesting process, and I love it.
And it turns out to be a very different thing than traditional dream analysis, where, you know, you have the analysand, and I quotes around the word, who are, you know, they come into the office of the good doctor and they tell them about their dream, and then they sit back and passively receive whatever the good doctor has to say about it. And they apply all this, you know, theory and, you know, the education that this person has, usually at a doctorate level. You know, this was the traditional image of what a dream an analyst was. But we like to say we are dream workers, and we don't need to bring all that stuff to the table, because the dream itself will tell us. It'll unfold. In fact, the dreamer, and Jeremy always said, you know,
the dreamer is the authority.
Say again?
I think it's the dreamer is the ultimate authority.
The dreamer is the ultimate authority on their own dream. So it's our job to lead them into it. And I appreciate you saying, you know, Kris, adding the part about picturing the dream as your own. This was something I learned from Carl Jung, and I've picked it up from others, and I've started applying it. Like when you were talking about the
the three pink dolphins, and they're talking with you. And as you're describing that, I'm closing my eyes and like feeling myself in that scene. And I'm seeing these three dolphins joyfully kind of poking their heads out of the water. And, they're talking to you, and I'm hearing, the dolphin chitter, that the playful sounds that they make. So in a way, I was experiencing your dream with you as you're describing it, but I'm working it through my own imagination. And of course, imagination is the processing center for dreams in our own minds. They've shown that dreaming as a process, as a function of the brain, uses the same areas of the brain in the same ways that our imagination does too. So bringing your imagination into the process of listening to someone else's dream helps you as a dream worker. You're activating by doing that, the part of your mind that is also creating your dreams. So you're creating a sort of synchronization between you and the person that you're working with. And or in a group, it could be, not necessarily as a dream worker, but if you're just kind of participating in a group, you've just given probably what is one of the greatest secrets of dream work. Just let your imagination play with the imagery and feel your way through it until something clicks for the person that you're talking about their dream with. So the beautiful thing there. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So, Steve, you thinking of a way that we can wrap this up?
Yeah, I would love to ask you pretty point blankly if you could in some way sum up exactly how this has all shaped you. If you could give us a look into the contents of your heart surrounding like what this has all meant to you, for this dreaming experience, for just the way that life has opened itself to you, all of it. If you could just give us a really beautiful summation of what this has meant for you, and how it's and your gratitude for how it's shaped you going forward.
Okay, well, I would say that my dreams and my experiences have really shown me what I already knew inside, that we are more than we realize. And I really think, I think I said it before, that the things we call magical and mystical and miraculous are actually just part of our natural inheritance. Because I look at us as cosmic beings incarnate in this moment of time, and it does feel like a miracle. And I think that, the dreams have helped me to really make space for the mystery in life. And and I'm really grateful. I knew somehow really early on that dreaming was going to be one of my most powerful tools and skills, and that has continued to be the case. And I am so grateful to have been exposed to the art of dreaming and all that it has done for me. It feels like so precious to me. My dreams are very precious. And I think that's really what I have to say about it. I like what James Hillman said about dreams. He said something like, if you want to know what your soul is up to, just look at your dreams. And I think when we look at the whole arc of our dreams, which I've been able to do over 30 years, we start to see our own mythic story take shape, and its colors, and its our aesthetic, and our, just our magical life. My dream journals are probably the most magical books I'll ever be able to read.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for that.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. It was so great to talk with you, and so great to have my buddy here with me. How fun.
Yeah, that was cool. I think that was a good 1-2 that we brought to it. So, and that Hillman quote, Kris, you just hit something for me where it gave me a whole new understanding, because I'd run across that recently. And he talked about how the dreaming is the soul doing its work. And as I've framed it that way in my own mind, it makes me, I go, well, okay, if that's what's going on, then what am I seeing? What is it that I can do to help it in its work? When I look at the dream, that's really how I think of it. Working with a dream now is the conscious side of me steps in and says, okay, if I can understand more about the dream, it's with the purpose in mind of helping the soul in its work, because it's waiting for me to go to sleep for it to have its time. It's like, here, let me borrow your mind for a little while here, and I'm going to go do my work. And then when you wake up in the morning, now you can have all your faculties back, but I'm going to borrow them here while you're asleep, and I'm going to do my work. And I look at that and I go, well, then that means if you're working with a dream, what you're really doing is helping your soul to evolve, which then, as if it wasn't already just a full of a process, a wonder of nature, full of mystery and power, wonder, like as if it wasn't already huge, it just got bigger. Yeah. So thank you for reminding me of that by bringing up Hillman, because he was very much viewed dreams from that perspective of that depth.
Yeah. And I really like that. I like looking at my dreams now from new perspectives like that of, more just as experiences that we can live and keep dreaming forward because we're in relationship to our dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. To close this, I think, man, there's a few points where hearing your story, I'm going to walk outside. It's 1:00 in the morning here in Minneapolis. I'm going to walk outside and I'm going to look at this world through a whole new set of eyes. You gave me a glimpse into a whole new way of seeing and perceiving the magic all around me. So on that note, nighty night.
Nighty night. Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah.
Sweet dreams.
Centuries ago, a debate raged about the nature of the relationship between a person and the world they live in, and the results set us on the course we find ourselves on today. especially with our approach to science and the paradigm that acts as a framework for how we perceive life in the world. On one side, we're the people who argued that there is no such thing as a truly objective scientific observation because the observer, that would be you and me and everybody, is too much a part of the world and everything in it. And everything we observe is subjectively colored. Our minds and consciousness are participants in the dance of creation, not observers sitting on the sidelines watching it all with complete detachment. Then there were the people who argued that we truly are islands unto ourselves. We can be truly objective because we can be truly detached from what we observe and measure, a philosophy known as dualism, the separation of mind and matter. That side of the debate, spearheaded by the philosopher René Descartes, won the day and set the course for scientific inquiry for the next 400 years. It's when we started losing touch with the magic of life in the world. And it is the roots of the mainstream opinion that dreams are self-contained experiences that extend no further than the individual who has them. It gave us the audacity to separate the dream from the dreamer, as if sealed in a vacuum chamber from the environment in which it's created. We put dreams under the microscope, and they lost their magic. At least, that's what we thought. But in this podcast, we've proven that's a mistaken approach. We've brought you story after story about dreams that tap the power to affect changes in the physical world. We've offered ample evidence of something behind the scenes in our dreams actively and intelligently engaging with us, dancing with us. And it is fundamental, actually shaping reality by affecting the course of our futures and our lives. Now with Kris, we can offer you a story where her dream became objectively real. When she found that crystal in a tree in Sedona, located exactly where she dreamed it would be, she showed through her experience that we really do participate in the dance of creation. We really are enmeshed in the fabric of reality to the point of influencing, if not actually creating it. If Kris were the only one to ever experience such a thing, we could make a plausible argument that it was an extraordinary coincidence, and maybe René Descartes would have the last laugh. But she's far from the only one, and it's a common experience for those of us who go deep into dreaming, especially when we are open to the mysteries of it. There's a lot of debate about whether what Carlos Castaneda wrote in his books has any truth to it, or that his great teacher Don Juan actually existed. But we do know that people like Kris have left the Western world to enter the world of shamans and ancestors and rituals, and a connection with nature that's so profound, you no longer know where you as an entity end and the world begins. There is no separation in the greater reality, and this loss of what we all once knew to be true is the root of our collective schizoid split. We split in our minds, and we split as a species, and we split as inhabitants of a living planet full of indescribably awesome creatures that would never dream of thinking of themselves as totally separate from each other and Mother Earth. Is life but a dream? We're ready to say that it's dreamlike in the sense that our external reality responds to our internal one to shape the personal experience of life. And perhaps consensus reality is similarly responsive, and truly, we are dreaming the world into existence every day and every night. Steve and I took a different approach to this interview. We decided to interview Kris together. In the meantime, head over to Instagram and tell us what you think. Our handle is The Dreams That Shape Us. Our website is dreamsshapeus.com. And as always, we end our show by wishing you nighty night.